Alice Ruggles was 24 years old when she was brutally murdered in October 2016 by her then ex-partner, Lance Corporal Treman Harry Dillon. Dillon followed the 8 stages of coercive control, with the last 8th stage being homicide. This is her story. Alice's family describe her as being kind, clever and beautiful, and recall that she had an incredibly bubbly personality, a quick wit and a great sense of humour. Everybody genuinely loved her. Her family and friends will always remember her for her happy and outgoing personality. She had the ability to cheer anyone up when they were down. She was a brilliant listener and genuinely empathetic. She quickly made friends wherever she went. She was described as strong, independent, caring, and, in her family's eyes, she was not a vulnerable person. The relationship first started in October 2015. Initially, this was via social media, as Dillon was serving in the army and was posted away in Afghanistan. Throughout the video, I will refer to Treman Harry Dillon as the perpetrator and also Dillon interchangeably. Alice first met Dillon face-to-face 3 months after their initial contact in January 2016. He resided at an army base in Edinburgh, which was approximately 130 miles away from Alice's flat in Gateshead. However, he would regularly make a 2.5-hour journey to visit her by car. The perpetrator himself arrived in the UK from India in September 2010 to study in Edinburgh before joining the British Army. He was initially based at barracks in Canterbury before being transferred in August 2013 to Edinburgh. He was a young man who showed less ability in social situations. He was sometimes considered one of the boys, and at other times he was thought of as being a bit odd. Stage 1. Pre-relationship. The warning signs. Dillon had a history of stalking previous girlfriends. Between January and July 2016, the perpetrator began exhibiting significant, albeit quite subtle, controlling behaviours towards Alice. The tactics he used meant it was often very difficult for Alice herself and her family members and friends to recognise or spot the signs of these behaviours. This type of build-up is often insidious and gradual, and is not always overtly obvious. As part of the homicide investigation into Alice's death, former partners provided witness statements that suggested that Dillon exhibited very controlling, manipulative and coercive behaviours with several of his past relationships. A lot of these bore similar, if not identical, hallmarks to issues that Alice experienced. He was revealed as a man who does not take rejection well and fails to accept the end of relationships. He has a history of resisting separation by partners, becoming quite threatening and difficult to manage, and engaging in stalking behaviours. He repeatedly demonstrated controlling and obsessive patterns of behaviour, characteristics that are commonly associated with men who resist separation, becoming threatening or even dangerous afterwards. In a previous relationship, Dillon proposed to a girlfriend in early May 2013 after only 9 months of dating. She initially accepted, and he travelled to India the next day for up to 3 to 4 weeks. Towards the end of May, this girlfriend changed her mind and said she no longer wanted to be with him. She subsequently ended the relationship, informing Dillon via Skype. She recalls he got quite nasty and he ended up flying back to England early. On the 4th of June 2013, an incident took place in Kent where the perpetrator had a verbal argument with this ex-girlfriend, which resulted in him assaulting her by spitting in her face. In her witness statement, the ex-girlfriend said she'd left work and was walking down a busy high street where she had arranged to meet with her new partner when the perpetrator suddenly appeared from nowhere and ran up to her in a rather aggressive manner. He blocked her from being able to walk away and would not let her leave. At this point, her new partner arrived on the scene. The perpetrator was rather aggressive towards him and walked towards him with clenched fists. He told her new partner that he wanted to talk to him like a gentleman and asked, "Why did you take my girlfriend away from me? Don't you think after a breakup it can be solved?" The woman tried to intervene and got in between the two males. She refers to the perpetrator as squaring up to her face to face. She asked if he was going to hit her, at which point he moved his head towards her and spat in her face and then ran off. Almost immediately after, Dillon then sent derogatory and unpleasant texts to his ex-girlfriend, telling her that he was glad he was no longer with her because she was a complete pussy who was scared of him, and that he wanted to make her cry and get a reaction out of her. This incident was reported to Kent Police and a report was made. Dylan's barracks was informed and the police were told that the army were holding Dylan in the guard room. Dylan denied deliberately spitting and stated that he was talking to her and some spit came out towards her. He was placed on bail with conditions. Alice had reported to her family members about this crazy ex who Dylan had told her about. Dylan had said she had tried to get a restraining order on him, but the army had laughed it out of court. He gave the impression to Alice that the army had protected him throughout and nothing was done about this. He also told Alice that he was involved in knife crime and gangs back in India and mentioned that he knew people in India that would carry out acid attacks. This made Alice feel scared. When he was assigned to barracks in Canterbury via the military, those in positions of relative authority thought he was outspoken and manipulative, playing people off against each other, and was seen as someone who would regularly question orders and answer back. He clearly had a problem with authority or being told what to do. Commanding officers also reported that he had issues with trust and integrity after he made an unfounded allegation against his superior, which he later dropped, as well as being regarded as oversensitive. Stage 2. Early relationship behaviours. Alice's friends and family recall that during the initial stages of the relationship, and at this time they had not physically met face to face, Dylan would act oddly. He would regularly go offline and not be in contact with Alice. Around this time, it is believed, based on interviews with work colleagues, that he asked Alice to change her Instagram and other social media accounts to be private so that no other man could see her, particularly other soldiers. On Christmas Eve, December 2015, again before they had physically met, there was an argument between Alice and Dylan. He had heard about Alice being involved in an event which he didn't want her to attend and had sent her a text about another woman which had upset Alice. In January 2016, Alice and the perpetrator met face to face for the first time. They spent 2 weeks together, 1 week in Scotland and 1 week in Newcastle. Alice seemed incredibly happy and was described by her friends as being completely besotted by Dylan. In early July 2016, big cracks began to show in their relationship. Alice moved out of the shared house in Newcastle and into a flat in Gateshead with a female friend from work. Alice and Dylan met her family in Carlisle. Alice's mum said she seemed different and not her usual self. She couldn't work out why, but she felt that Alice did not want to talk about it in front of Dylan. Dylan had told her parents that he had some savings and wanted to buy a house that he and Alice would live in. Her parents felt this was odd as it was a very big commitment and they were not happy about this so early on in their relationship. Alice's dad stated that he got the feeling that Dylan was saying things in order to try to impress him in a disingenuous way. Several witnesses stated that things began to change and that this was visible from the outside of the relationship. Friends from Alice's work report that the contact between Alice and Dylan seemed more intense, and they would also argue about silly things. He would message her consistently, all the time, and when she did not reply straight away, he would start to question her. He would ask her where she was, what she was doing, and continuously doubted her. He would expect Alice to send him photos of her at work to prove that she was there. Around this time, Alice had a work event with friends. She had been on a night out but was on her phone continuously and seemed withdrawn and unhappy. That same night, Dylan suddenly appeared unannounced at the hotel she was at with her work colleagues. He was visibly unhappy and he and Alice argued. In the morning, Alice and Dylan came down for breakfast and sat at a separate table from her work colleagues. They recall that Alice looked quite sad and they had obviously been arguing all night. In April 2016, Alice's family recall remembering that she had a new phone but were unsure where she got it from. It was also around this time that Dylan was using online dating sites without Alice's knowledge. He's reported to have exchanged several texts over a couple of days with a new girl called Sarah. On the 13th of May, Dylan met with Sarah, his new online Tinder girl, face to face in Edinburgh. According to Sarah's statement, which she gave to police after she heard of Alice's murder, the perpetrator told her that he felt awkward when they first met, hadn't been on many dates, and that this was the first time he'd met anyone online. They had consensual sex and he left abruptly without giving any reason. After this, there was no further contact from the perpetrator for a month. At the end of May 2016, Alice and the perpetrator visited her parents' home for the second bank holiday weekend in May. During this time, Alice's parents recall the perpetrator being completely obsessed with buying a car, so much so that he seemed to ignore Alice and her parents and only focused on the car. They thought this was extremely odd. Stage 3. Relationship behaviours. Risk markers. As evidenced by the information provided already, it's clear that Dylan was possessive and a jealous man. He wanted to isolate Alice from her friends and family quickly, and he also made several suicide threats. It was revealed that the main reason that Alice had moved from a flat in Newcastle to a flat with a work colleague in Gateshead was due to Dylan becoming jealous of male tenants that lived with Alice. Alice had told others that the men in the house had suddenly stopped talking to her and would even pass her in the hallway and not speak to her. This was very odd for Alice as she got along with everyone and found this unbearable. It was later revealed that Dylan had threatened the housemates for speaking to Alice and that they were scared of him. At the beginning of June 2016, Alice suspected the perpetrator was cheating on her with other women. She'd been contacted by a young woman on Facebook who said that he had invited her to a military ball. He had invited Alice to the same event. Alice had told family and friends that she was looking forward to attending the event and had already bought a dress. She was said to have been devastated when she found out this news. The woman told Alice that Dylan was also active on Tinder. Alice confronted Dylan about the woman and being active on Tinder, and he denied it and said he had no idea what the woman was talking about. He went on to tell Alice that an army friend must have created a fake Tinder account in his name. Alice did not buy the story, and she told family and friends that she did not believe him. When Alice had confronted Dylan about this, she had slapped him whilst she was upset and arguing about this incident. She also told her sister that if she met Dylan, to go along with the ruse to avoid any potential conflict. Although Alice was extremely hurt by this incident, she did not end the relationship at that time and had said that she did not want to be on her own. Alice said she had no friends now and no one seemed to like her anymore, and that the perpetrator was the only person she had had. This was a far cry from the bubbly, friendly and energetic Alice of a year previous. Soon after the incident with the Tinder account, Alice received a Facebook message from a random male. The message said that he had seen Alice around the army barracks and asked if she wanted to chat. Alice immediately thought that it was Dylan trying to trick her. Once she told this man that she could track his IP back to his Facebook profile, the account and message was instantly deleted. Whilst this was happening, Dylan was continuing to message and text Sarah from Tinder, attempting to meet up with her frequently to engage in sex. Sarah reported that they had a casual sex relationship, but she often felt pressured into having sex with him. After the Tinder incident, we know from Alice's work colleagues that Dylan started to buy Alice a lot of presents, but would often take these presents back if they'd had an argument or Alice had wronged him in some perceived way. They argued a lot about money during this time. Alice appeared to pay for everything, and Dylan claimed he had no money and would pay for nothing. Her friend said he would also restrict her purchases. For example, Alice wanted to buy herself a wardrobe, but he would not let her, as he said that she did not need it, while at the same time he would go and buy an expensive 1 Series BMW, yet claim he had no money. When Alice moved into the flat with her work colleague, Dylan's subtle behaviours and tactics to control Alice became more and more obvious. He didn't want her to wear certain clothes and wanted her covered up so no one could see her. He said he did not want people looking at her. He would continuously text her. In mid-July 2016, Alice was invited to a barbecue by work friends, and Dylan texted her constantly all night. At one point, he insisted she send him a photo of the barbecue to prove that she was there. He then threatened to drive down and meet her at the barbecue. He texted Alice saying, "What have I got to do to prove I love you? Do I have to cut off both of my arms and write a letter in blood?" Friends recalled Alice being very worried and anxious and looked sick of the constant contact with Dylan and was quiet throughout the night. A while later, Alice uncharacteristically left the barbecue early and quite abruptly, and it later transpired that Dylan had turned up and was waiting outside to pick her up. Around this point, Alice recalls that they told her that Dylan kept referring to her as being paranoid, saying that she didn't have anyone and he was the only person she could trust. There was one incident with her flatmate when Alice had decided to have a shower. However, Because Dylan needed the bathroom while she was in the shower, he made her leave the shower with shampoo and body wash still on her body and stand in the hallway. Even Alice knew that at this point it had gone too far, and she told her flatmate that he was possessive, mind-controlling and manipulative. Her flatmate put her foot down and said that she no longer wanted Dylan in their flat. She said that Alice seemed relieved of this, and almost as if she wasn't able to muster up this courage herself. Stage 4. Potential homicide triggers. In August 2016, Alice ended the relationship with Dylan. She told her mum that he'd been lying to her and he'd been on a dating site. When she ended the relationship, Dylan would not accept this. He even texted her parents with reasons why they should not split. He engaged in begging, threats, and then stalking. Alice also believed that he was hacking into her social media accounts and her emails, and she stated that at times she would see notifications for messages, but then when she clicked on them, they would disappear. On the 5th of August 2016, Alice told her sister that Dylan's behaviour was making her feel tense and very uneasy. Her sister encouraged her to continue making reports to the police, but Alice was wary of doing this because she had slapped him when she had found out about the Tinder account and was concerned that the police would not take her serious due to this. On the 5th of August 2016, the perpetrator made plans to meet with Sarah and travelled approximately 45 miles from his barracks in Edinburgh to Perth, arriving at 8 o'clock. Her witness statement discloses that whilst he wasn't necessarily aggressive, she was intimidated by him and again felt pressured into having unprotected sex. Alice reported to a friend at work that Dylan had some intimate personal photographs of her which he had pressured her to send. This played heavily on Alice's mind as she was worried that he might share them online. She felt ashamed and as if Dylan had a hold over her because of this. When sending the photos to Dylan, he told Alice that if she loved him, she would do it. Around this time, Dylan also made several fake accounts pretending to be Alice. He admitted to Alice to accessing her Facebook account in August, saying that he did not want her to be on Tinder, which can be accessed through Facebook, and was trying to restrict her ability to start a relationship with anyone else. Stage 5. Escalation warning signs. Around this time, Dylan's stalking began to escalate. As Dylan lived on the barracks, when making these threats, Alice would ring the barracks and have someone go to his room to check on him. He would then blame Alice for making things up. On the 2nd of September 2016, Alice visited her other sister in Germany for the weekend, where she met one of her sister's male friends for the first time. They seemed to bond with each other and struck up a connection. He and Alice became friends on Facebook and started messaging each other via WhatsApp when Alice returned. Throughout this time, the perpetrator was still in contact with Alice. He told her that he knew the male she was messaging, and at this point, Alice thought the perpetrator had hacked into her WhatsApp account. On the 22nd of September 2016, Dylan had sent several messages to the male friend Alice had met in Germany, saying she had been lying about not wanting to be with him, and sent screenshots of text messages between himself, Dylan, and Alice, which he claimed confirmed that Alice had been playing both of them off against each other. Around this time, interviews with family members highlight that Alice was terrified that Dylan had a key to her flat. He would consistently contact her, sending her messages, leaving her voicemails throughout the day and night, although the relationship had been over for quite a while. One message read, "I'm not used to losing something that belongs to me." Also during this time, Alice would regularly receive up to 5 friend requests on Facebook per day from what she perceived to be fake accounts. On the 22nd of September 2016, Alice's sister received an email to inform her that someone was trying to gain access or hack into her Microsoft account. Alice was convinced it was Dylan. On the 24th of September 2016, Alice called the non-emergency number for the police, and according to call records, she was put on hold for nearly 7 minutes before abandoning the call without having spoken to a call handler. She messaged her sister to say the 101 number was busy and that she would call back later. On the 30th of September 2016, Alice was alone at home when she received a voicemail from Dylan expressing anger and saying he did not know what was going on. Several minutes later, she heard a knock on the front door. She went to the door and looked out of the spy hole, but no one was there. Alice phoned the perpetrator and he said he was in Edinburgh. He told Alice he was pleased to hear from her and said he missed her and was in tears. There was a second knock at the door again. Alice looked through the spy hole, but no one was there. She was convinced it was Dylan. Then came a third knock, this time on Alice's bedroom window. She opened the curtains and saw Dylan with flowers and chocolates, which he laid on the windowsill. He backed off, raising his hands in an upright position, and walked backwards towards the rear gate, before leaving the vicinity. He then left a voicemail on Alice's phone asking her to call him back. She also received a text from him telling her that he had been in her garden since 5 o'clock that evening. Alice was very frightened and contacted a friend who came over to the flat and stayed with her that night. Alice's sister states that this was the first time that Alice was truly scared. Stage 6, a change in thinking. It was at this point that Dylan realised Alice would not go back to him. There was another man now involved in her life. On the 1st of October 2016, Alice received a voicemail message from Dylan who said he did not want to kill her on 5 separate occasions.
I just wanted to give you flowers and chocolates to prove that, no, I don't want to kill you. I'm not intending to kill you. That's all I wanted to say. Killing you is something that I've never, ever thought about. And I will never, ever even think about that.
In his voicemail, he said, I've literally done nothing. I've never hurt you. Never done any physical hurt to you. No, I don't want to kill you. I'm not intending to kill you. That's all I wanted to say, that I didn't want to kill you. That's why I gave you chocolates and flowers and walked straight out. On the 2nd of October, a police officer came to Alice's flat following a phone call from Alice to the police. He conducted a DASH risk assessment, which is a domestic abuse, stalking and harassment risk indicator checklist. Alice was placed at medium risk, meaning there were identifiable factors of risk of serious harm, and the perpetrator had potential to cause serious harm but is unlikely to do so unless there is a change of circumstances. The police officer also contacted Dylan's barracks and spoke to the unit welfare officer. A request was made for Dylan to be spoken to and warned not to contact Alice or her family again by any means, either directly or indirectly, including social media. The police officer advised that if Dylan contacted Alice again, he would be prosecuted for an offence of harassment. On the 3rd of October, Dylan was spoken to by the regimental signals officer and was told to stay away from Alice and to cease any further contact with her. Dylan, of course, denied the allegations, claiming that Alice blew hot and cold on him and that she physically abused him. The officer reminded Dylan about the impact of the repercussions of his actions on his career if he continues to pursue Alice. Later that evening, Alice told her sister that she felt more confident after meeting with this police officer who genuinely seemed to care about her. She had a feeling that it was over, and she seemed to come across as feeling empowered and felt that this would finally stop Dylan from contacting her.
The police harassment notice filed against him did not stop Harry. Just a few weeks after Alice's phone call to the police, he sent a package to her house with a letter and some old photos of them. Alice was getting more and more terrified for her life, and even after informing the police a second time, nothing was happening.
Stage 7. Planning. At some point, Dylan had came to Alice's house and began taking photos of the back of her house. He was watching the house and the movements of the occupants within it. He had decided what weapon he would use, how he would use it, where he would get it, and how he would dispose of it. During this stage, the perpetrator may tell others of their plans, although it's more likely that this will be covert, not obvious to others. Stage 8. Homicide. On October 12th, 2016, Dylan had snuck into Alice's flat via an open window and waited for her. When she arrived home, Alice initially was at first completely unaware that Dylan was in the flat. From the crime scene, it looked as if Alice had been getting into the shower or was in the shower at the time of the murder. Dylan appeared and stabbed her viciously and repeatedly. Dylan kneeled on Alice's small frame from behind, held up her head and cut her throat. He did this with so much force and at least 6 times that Alice's autopsy showed that even her spinal cord had knife cuts. In total, she suffered 24 injuries.
So there's a bedroom there. Substantial lock on the back door.
It is, isn't it?
So, lock on the front door.
Yeah.
That locked.
Yeah. And a bit of blood there. But...
Here we've got a little bit of blood here on the floor. Still got paramedics equipment in here as well. She's lying on her back in the bathroom with a very large hole in her neck. The bathroom's completely awash with blood.
Within a few hours, Dylan was arrested for Alice's murder.
Alice Ruggles was found at her home address in Gateshead and she'd been murdered. Did you murder Alice?
No, I did not murder Alice.
Do you have any knowledge of this?
No, I don't have any knowledge of this.
Were you present when this murder occurred?
No, I wasn't.
So we have been doing some telecoms work. Alright.
You remember you saw Alice's phone in her hand when you left?
Yep.
Yeah. You don't want to change your mind, do you?
No.
Before we show you this?
No, it was pretty much in her hand.
Yeah. I'm going to show you something that'll suggest otherwise.
It was, so... Can I speak to my solicitor first, and then I'll speak to you?
We'll pause the interview. It is 1:34 p.m. We have Alice's phone pinging off a mast, because they connect to masts, alright, that's what the GPRS is about, on the A1 near the Kenton area. The route you've told us that you have driven after you've left the house. Yeah? What I'm saying to you is, you have taken Alice's phone. What have you got to say about that?
No comment.
So that may suggest you were lying about the altercation with Alice in the backyard. Is that right?
No comment.
We know exactly what you did. We've been told exactly what happened to her. And how you cut her throat.
No comment.
Are you looking back? Are you? Do you remember what happened?
No comment.
Do you remember what you did?
No comment.
Do you remember how bad it was?
No comment.
Do you remember the blood spraying?
No comment.
I'm being told that you suffered. She must have known what was happening. Because she didn't die straight away.
You've got 4 tiny little scratches on your face. Her throat is slit open through the voice box.
Sat at you for 2 days, showing no remorse whatsoever.
You said you loved her. You didn't love her. You thought if you can't have her, no one else can have her. That's exactly what you thought, because she doesn't want you. Is that the truth?
No comment.
Why are you no commenting now? Because you're guilty. How can you do that to someone you love? Because you're jealous, possessive, controlling, stalker, murderer.
Police later found traces of Alice's blood on Harry's bracelet and steering wheel.
Dylan was sentenced to a minimum of 22 years. Alice's death was wholly preventable. The action taken by the police, although not described in full detail during this video, was insufficient and not fit for purpose. Further police training is needed in the area of coercive control and the stages of abuse which lead to homicide, for them to better understand and act in situations where stalking is occurring, as stalking is one of the biggest indicators that a perpetrator will go on to murder their victim. It should be noted that domestic-related homicide, especially intimate partner homicide, is a gendered crime, which means that we know through research women are disproportionately affected and that men are disproportionately perpetrators of domestic homicide.